Good evening from our headquarters in Kiev. This is This Sunday Show at Hromadske International, the only prime-time discussion in English explaining Eastern European geopolitical storm, and I'm Natalia Humenyuk. It's have been 3 months since 24 Ukrainian sailors had been detained by Russia. Now they are kept in Moscow. Illegally, they are charged despite the fact that they are war prisoners. It happened during the famous case, which is internationally known as the Kerch incident, when there were 3 Ukrainian military boats shot by the Russian military fleet. Yet those events have been overshadowed by the discussion about the martial law in Ukraine. There was international condemnation, but the story is there. There are still people tried. There were at least 3 persons among the soldiers require medical help. There is no proper access of the lawyers. And we hear 3 months after, following this discussion, but as well during these days when we are also remembering the 5 years of the annexation of the Crimea by Russia, would like to raise and draw their attention to the issue, to see what could be done. And we have quite a panel here. We have Victoria Ivleva, who is a Russian journalist and also volunteer helping the Ukrainian prisoners there in Moscow. Leila Omer is a director of the Foundation for Support of Prisoners of War Baraber, who are raising the funds for the people there as well. Serhiy Shumsky is the member of Association of Veterans of the Ukrainian Navy, and Bogdan Kriklevenko is a human rights defender who is co-founder of the Institute of the Human Rights here in Ukraine. Probably the most important to say, besides we will definitely show what the lawyers of the people say, maybe Bogdan would explain the situation, what are the most critical in this case, what the international community, who also didn't follow this story in March, should know.
So after 3 months, today we have the most relevant document. It's a resolution of the Parliament Assembly of the Council of Europe, where we have indicating, so it's somewhere in the middle, what the Ukrainian delegation would like to see in this document and what we really have in this document. That we have the reference to the Geneva Convention related to the prisoners of war, and with just simple understanding of international obligation, the 24 Ukrainian soldiers should be released immediately, and so it's impossible to apply in their situation the regular criminal law, what we see in the story of this last 3 months in Russia. They should be released on the ground of the Geneva Convention because they really were kept during their military task, peaceful really military task, and that's why everybody know, and in accordance with international legislation, international humanitarian law, they are the prisoners of war. But unfortunately, in such big case, as in the same in other cases, we see the total ignoring by the Russia Federation international humanitarian law and denying of justification of their status. So we think that we have no any other possibility just to wait of so-called judgments in their case related to all 24 prisoners of war, and after that maybe the process of release will be faster. Unfortunately, I don't see other possibilities. In the same time, the Ukraine as a state and the civil society in Ukraine, and not the national civil society in Ukraine, but abroad, everybody should work for collecting evidences of such violation by Russia Federation of international law. And of course, it's already the case before European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. And for sure, I'm sure that one day it will be the case for the International Court of Justice in Hague.
Victoria, you've been during the trial. There was a trial in the mid of January, but you were trying to at least help, for instance, to bring some goods, some products. So what can you say about the conditions and of how they are held?
I don't know, to be honest, because I'm just an ordinary citizen of Russia, and I'm not alone. It's a group of people who are trying to help the Ukrainian sailors. Actually, they're not soldiers; they're military sailors. So what we do, we just bring food according to the law, and I don't see much apart from the place where you come with your food. It's about 300 kilos every time, because there are 24, and it's allowed 30 kilos per person per month. So we divide it into parcels, if we can call it a parcel. Each of them has a big green bag with the name written on it, and we collect what we think would be good for them to eat there. And it's 15 kilos per time, so it's more than 300 kilos of food we have to. It's all brought into my house. We put it into special little bags. It's a long story what we do at home to separate one from the other and to prepare the bags according to what they want, because some of them don't take milk, some of them want sugar, some of them want more meat, etc., etc. So this is what we do. It's a very ordinary thing on one hand. On the other hand, it takes several days to collect everything and prepare and get there.
But it's basic. We'll follow on the help. But Leila, are you in touch with the families? What we know, to what extent there is any communication with the people detained?
Well, actually, we have several volunteers who has connected with the families, because we don't have direct connection, unfortunately, because it's not just common civils, it's Navy, it's sailors, so, but somehow we connect with them, and we learn what needs they have. And actually our foundation is brand new, absolutely new, and first of all, it all started with a very emotional post on Facebook. Osman wrote that we just have to, we should collect some money in order to buy cigarettes for our sailors. And during 3 days, we realized that the sum of money was rather big, and so we decided to create a foundation in order to help our sailors. And now, of course, what we do is just to transfer some money for different needs, and that's it.
I could probably remind now, at least now with these people, but besides 24 war prisoners, we have at least 80 political prisoners in Russia, including occupied Crimea. A lot of them are Crimean Tatars, but not just. They've been detained within this last 5 years. However, these were the new detention. Serhiy, you're the member of Association of Veterans of the Ukrainian Navy. What are the peculiarities of the situation? These people are war prisoners. They are sailors. They were actually, just doing what the commanders were saying. What also could be done in their case? What we expect from the state?
Yeah, on my mind, this is the case not only of a humanitarian direction, it's also a rude violation of international law of sea from side of Russia. And these guys should not be treated as only as a, just an ordinary people. They are military personnel. They did their duties, and they did their duties according to the international law. And it was a huge surprise what Russia done, because in a month before this case, same situation, 2 Ukrainian warships passed innocently. It is called innocent pass through the Kerch Strait, and it was. There were some let's say attention or rumors from the Russian side about this case, but they did it, this passage. And what they did with these 3 warships of Ukraine, I think the problem is rather say a bit deeper than just a humanitarian laws violation. It might be a case or a sign how Russia, contemporary Russia, how they recognize Ukraine, current Ukraine. Yeah? Whether they recognize us as a country, which has because it seems what they did not as against military or warships. They did it like against our sailors. They did it as treated us as a pirates there. Probably, I don't know. This is the case. So I think we should also think about that too.
There was an international condemnation, and it's still there, and probably could be more. I would like to give a word to one of the lawyers, to Nikolai Polozov, who is a Russian lawyer, and his defender is Denis Hrytsenko, who was actually running the operation, and that's what Nikolai says.
What do we know about the officers' state of health and the medical care, which they need and have been refused? Have they been refused it?
In terms of a defence strategy, of course there's no way that the Russian courts, the Russian investigations will grasp the problems, examine the evidence, which the defence presents either. This certainty is based on the fact that, over the last 5 years, there have been several dozen cases relating to Ukrainian political prisoners, in which the Russian authorities have handed out sentences in a completely unlawful way. Of course, the strategy is based on the fact that, if there were the political will to arrest them, then they must be released because of that political will. There is an international agreement, the Third Geneva Convention on the Treatment of Prisoners of War. This agreement was signed and ratified by both Russia and Ukraine, as well as many other countries. And that's the totality of what happened on November 25th of last year. It fits completely with concepts that are fixed in international law. Let's say, in relation to ordinary political prisoners who are not prisoners of war, of course prisoners of war have more rights. They cannot be placed in pre-trial detention, they cannot be separated, they must have uniforms. Moreover, according to this agreement, the Russian authorities are still obligated to pay them a monthly salary. But we see that the Russian authorities persistently violate the norms of international law, violate the Third Geneva Convention, ignore calls from international organisations, including the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, for the immediate release of these prisoners of war. Well, so far, the big problem is that we have no official reports on the state of their health. They have not been given to either the defence or the lawyers of the injured prisoners of war, or the Ukrainian authorities. We have been provided with some excerpts and reports from pre-trial detention centre, which state that they are almost completely healthy, thanks to strong pressure from the public and in connection with our request for the injured to be hospitalised, as they were promised examinations. But one of the wounded, Andrei Artemenko, who managed to get a medical examination before the hearing, told his lawyer what happened. He was taken from the detention centre to the Pirogov City Hospital No. 1 in Moscow. Over the course of 2 to 3 hours, he underwent some medical procedures. They used medical equipment on him. Although he was not told what was being done to him, he did not give informed consent for any of these procedures to be conducted on him. They did not tell him the results, but to tick the box, the Russian authorities will declare that we have examined the wounded. We know that a similar thing happened to wounded sailor Eder. What's happening with Vasil Soroka, we don't have any information yet, but he will most likely be brought in and treated as an outpatient or something. Of course, this does not meet the requirements which Russia is claiming about the medical assistance for the wounded. Of course, our wounded spoke subjectively about their health to the lawyers. Our lawyers are not medical specialists. They can only subjectively evaluate these claims. That he hurt his arm, his leg hurts, that his eyesight is failing, etc. However, I repeat, the Russian authorities have not handed over a single official document, and that makes it difficult to make a diagnosis. It makes it difficult to establish a treatment plan and a rehabilitation plan. So far, all 3 of the wounded still have shrapnel that hasn't been extracted. While the investigation will go on until the end of May, their term of detention will last until the end of April. If, in mid-April, or even the start, the investigation will go to court with a request to extend the term of detention, and that will mean the investigation will be delayed. This pause, which has come about internally in Russia, of course we are not going to wait. Now we're preparing the first set of documents for submitting individual complaints to the European Court of Human Rights. There are already Ukrainian lawyers who we will be working with in this case and will submit the relevant complaints on the Navy officers, the prisoners of war behalf. But don't forget that the Russian authorities exert political pressure on the prisoners of war, in that they are called in for interviews and FSB operatives try and get them to testify on their friends, confess guilt. Moreover, with a number of them, so-called in-cell investigations are being carried out, where a cellmate is specially planted in a cell with them. Naturally, the lawyers instruct the prisoners on how to act in these cases, the things they must categorically not do. Naturally, all the prisoners of war refuse to answer any of these questions during these conversations and generally refuse to talk without a lawyer or consul present. We are waiting to see how the investigation develops, because the course and order of the investigation is determined by the investigator. In our case, it's led by the investigative department of the FSB.
I would like also to show a short piece when our own correspondent managed shortly to talk to the sailors himself during the trial in the mid of January.
Ваше самопочуття, скажіть.
Все добре, держимось, дякую.
Только по-русски.
Только по-русски. Что понимали?
Только по-русски, еще раз говорю.
А как ваше самочувствие? Ми через перекладача.
Самопочуття добре, всі держаться, дякую.
Я українською ЗМІ. Девушка, як ваше самопочуття?
Все добре, все добре.
And so that's what we heard. Of course, it can be discussed in the political case. We can speak about the human rights violation. However, Bogdan, using all the mechanism, international mechanism, we just heard about these cases of the healthcare issues, of people being wounded. What could be done?
Yeah, just a short comment that we see the brave Ukrainian sailors who have no any complaint. They feel good in any situation, even then they in the illegal detention. So related to your question, just to remind that during this aggression attack, the 3 sailors were wounded and they are still in need of special medical assistance. Unfortunately, we have the dozens, maybe the hundreds of cases from the Strasbourg court where we saw the fact that the penitentiary system in Russia, there are our sailors now in detention, have the very poor medical assistance in the system. So that's why we can see and not the fact that nobody from the civil doctors or from the international doctors or even from, as it was requested, from the Ukrainian doctors has no any access for the meeting. In this case of prisoners of war, or even we can say that this is the same scenarios as we saw in previous cases with, for example, Pavlo Grib case, where we spent months to get access for independent doctors for expertise, what is the real medical needs of this boy, or most old case with the Stanislav Klich, also the same picture. This is a total isolation and ban for access for any international presence. Also in this case. So the one of the ways, it's of course of course,
Alexei was not allowed to see
so
any
this is the
help.
same scenarios written in the Kremlin, that the political prisoners should be isolated and they just should be kept to be alive, but without normal condition for medical assistance.
Victoria, of course you say you are kind of a private person, a citizen. However, knowing something about the Russian prisoner system and the way the things are handled in Lefortovo, what we also can say about, for instance, how we can treat this idea that the probably FSB people could visit the sailors in their cells and put a pressure on them.
I would say FSB people could do whatever they want to do in this country, and there's nothing we can do to stop them. The only thing we could do is to support the sailors. We support them in our way by bringing food, because it's vitally important, not because they're not fed. They are fed, and more or less normally in Lefortovo. Anyway, there's not a single person who died in a Russian prison of being malnourished. But you, all of you and everyone who listens to us should write letters to them. Nothing is better than support from your own motherland to show that your country remembers you, that your country cares about you. This is not difficult.
There was also the case that...
Just to add a few sentences, that as it was already suggested, that we should stay on the position that these 3 wounded sailors should be transferred for medical assistance to the third state, who in a neutral situation, it could be, I don't know, Switzerland, for example, so where they can receive the really independent and high-level medical assistance. Just, I want to remind that a few years ago, then 2 Russian soldiers, Yerofeev and Alexandrov, was kept on the east of Ukraine. I personally also, as a public defender in Ukraine, received the access to the military hospital there they kept, and I personally in that time checked what is the type of medical assistance they received. But nothing in Russia for today. They totally isolated this group of people, and nobody have the access just to check the real situation with them.
Serhiy, also on the, I think like our audience, they're mainly civilians. And of course, people understand what is they kind of have an idea what the Geneva Convention is. But what is the defense line that, of course, for instance, Roman Makryak, who is the captain, says, like, it was my commands, so my people shouldn't be tried.
Yeah.
What would you say as also the former Navy?
He was absolutely right, but in a normal condition, in a normal communication, in a normal case, let's say. In this case, I would say it's not a normal case. It's something that overpassed the normal shape. So, yes, he really was right as a commanding officer of our warship. He was right that, first of all, of course, he executed command of his superiors, and his personnel also did everything according to his order. So, if it have been or had been a normal legal case in a normal country, it would have been, of course, right, and we should have paid attention on that. But in this case, as Victoria said, FSB people in Russia could do everything they want, and who could stop them? What we did during this period as an association of veterans of Ukrainian Navy, of course, we demonstrated. Again, thanks to Victoria, who mentioned this idea to write letters to demonstrate all the our support to them, to these guys. What we did, we announced and we started together with other public organizations the public action of raising, for example, raising the flags of Ukrainian Navy. Throughout in all possible Ukrainian cities and towns. We also joined the action of signing letters, because in my past I also spent a year serving again back with the army, not with Navy but with the army for now. Couple of years ago in 2014-15, and I remember that times when we received letters from children with these paintings and arts, with this, it was very, warm and touchable. Yeah.
I have to say, may I interrupt? I have to say, lots of people came to the court, just ordinary people, to support them. And they were shouting "Glory to Ukraine" and "Slava Ukraini," etc., etc., applauding them. And I would say this is a support though they don't know us, they have no idea who is doing those parcels for them. They don't know my name, and I remember their first letters back home were, some unknown people send us clothes, some unknown people send us food. But, well, we're still probably unknown to them, but it doesn't matter. What matters is the support, and they feel it, they understand it. And this is not illegal, which is vitally important in Russia, not to do anything that is illegal.
I would probably also give the word, thanks Victoria, to another lawyer, Ilya Novikov, who is defending Roman Makryak, the captain of Berdyansk boat, and he's been famous in many other cases, defending Ukrainian political prisoners in Russia, and especially speaking about the difficulties the lawyers have in this case. Ilya, thanks a lot for being with us. Our first question is really, first of all, what are the conditions of your defendant, Roman Makryak, and to what extent you are able to communicate with them, and what are conditions for the lawyers? What is the level of access?
Well, Roman feels good. He was not one of wounded persons, he has no claims against conditions. Our working conditions are quite poor. It's need to be understood that this very facility is the high security detention center for persons, for prisoners, for persons to be held in custody, and not in accordance with Russian law about the attorney's privilege to visit his client as often as it's convenient for them. This detention center practices the system which prevents me and my colleagues from visiting our clients more often than once a week at the best. So we lack one of the most important things in the present situation. We lack the possibility to visit our clients on a regular basis. We cannot predict when it will be next time when we see each attorney his respective clients, and we know exactly that our clients already, in many occasions, were approached by people who we believe working for FSB, and were asked questions, and were made the propositions to change their position, to refuse, or to renounce the declaration of being prisoners of war, which is an important part of this case. And we cannot secure our clients be untouched and not approached by people from FSB.
Do the judges, do the people there really understand what the Geneva Conventions are? How do they react?
Claims that it cannot be prisoners of war when there is no war, which is against the Article 2 of the Southern Geneva Convention, which prescribes that in any cases when war is not officially declared, but when the military conflict takes place, any military person captured as a result of military action will be regarded as prisoners of war. This convention is for sure a part of Russian national law system. Every judge and every prosecutor and every investigator presumed to be aware of these articles and to understand them correctly. So I believe in a long distance range, when this case will be decided on some international level, the decisions and the conduct of Russian party will be regarded not according with international law.
And we have numbers, dozens, political prisoners, Ukrainian political prisoners in Russia, up to 80 people, including in the territory of the annexed Crimea. Yet, usually there were talks about the prisoners' exchange. How about this this point, or in this case, the only demand is the freeing the war prisoners?
Yes, it's very important to reiterate that right now the Ukrainian party and Europeans and Americans who made a statement on this situation, nobody of them proposed some sort of exchange. The only demand is to release all these 24 sailors without any additional conditions, because they were captured unlawfully. It has to be understood quite clearly that if Russian authorities will be permitted to use people as some trade material, it will be it can came to much more grim consequences than we already have right now.
So this discussion for many of Ukrainians and as well probably internationals among our audience can look like another déjà vu, as a bit of a stalemate. Oh, again, war prisoners, or political prisoners from Ukraine, nothing could be done. However, probably there are some things which at least could be done, not to free, but to help. The people, we have here as well Osman Pashayev, who is the Ukrainian journalist, Crimean Tatar journalist, is also was a person who launched the crowdfunding campaign, supporting these particular people, these 24 sailors. Osman, at this stage, you raised within a couple of days around what I say, like 13,000 euros, which for Ukrainian, 12,000 euros, which for Ukraine it's a huge amount from getting from the Ukrainians. However, what could be done at this stage to help the people that all the people are not just discouraged by the fact that we can do anything?
It was emotional. Leila told everything about it. It was collecting for cigarettes, because I'm a smoker. Now we are starting propaganda of smoking, and I have known from one advocate that guys in Simferopol trial without cigarettes, even without cigarettes. That's why I posted this emotional post, and I have thoughts that we can collect $300 or $400 and to send it to Simferopol immediately, and get it for during 3 days this amount, and it's changed my life, because all my life stopped. My credit card was full this money. I couldn't pay it in shops. That's why it shocked me during 3 days. That's why I decided to create this foundation. But I would like to be honest. I don't know how to build foundation, how to make strategy, what I have to do. We have to learn it.
Still within this time, you've been in touch with the volunteers, who've been in touch with the families. Mm-hmm. What is needed? What really in this case, maybe the families say, there is one part, some cases go to European court and other things, but there are some imminent things which are happening here and now. Leila.
Okay, so, about needs.
Victoria explain everything what they need, because
yes, it's food, some medicine. Well, it depends.
And support. Now, for example, now we are organizing support with letters from celebrities.
From singers, sportsmen, and
singers, sportsmen,
actors.
Actors, yeah.
So now we've got about 14 letters, yeah.
From the celebrities.
Yes, from the celebrities, Ukrainian celebrities, and now it's on the...
Klitschko promised to write for every 24 prisoners, and we are waiting for a letter from them.
Yes, and now we have letters from Dmitro Shurov, Dzidzo, and...
very difficult with sportsmen, with
they're very busy.
Boxers and our soccers. It's really difficult to get letters from them, but we are hoping that everything will be okay.
And Sergei, still, they are sailors. They are, Ukrainian. There is a Ukrainian army. There is a Ukrainian navy. How they should be supported? Because for us it's a bit striking still that after 5 years of the Russian annexation, still there is a demand for volunteer support, not really the coherent state support.
I should ask you for verification of your question. Who should be support?
What the state can do?
Navy or
what
prisoners?
The state can do in this case? What they can do, at least for the families, for them?
Yeah, I think yes, you're right. Because Navy was the organization who sent the guys there. I think Navy and the state should take the most part of the support and the most part of the activities, which would lead to free these guys, and yes, but but again, this is a case which is not normal. No for Navy, no for state, I believe, and that's why the human rights authorities took part in this case.
We are discussing about dichotomy. State have to support Navy and society too. Society have to support too. It must be together.
Absolutely. But
my still a big question to clarify to Bogdan. You've been also following the whole case with support for the prisoners of war. Really, where is the system, of what we do when a Ukrainian had become a Russian political prisoner or war prisoner?
First of all, that I don't think that here is some necessary level of support. I think this level could be as much as it possible. So the state, the state should do their obligation, and the society, civil society in Ukraine, including the celebrities and very good activists and initiatives, what we already heard. The international society who also watching us should think about their possibility to help and to assist, how to make much closer the day then these 24 sailors will receive the freedom. So here is very difficult. It's impossible to say that in this group of cases we should go through this direction, because it's a complex of the different issues related to Russia and Ukrainian tensions and really Russian aggression, which was started 5 years ago since the occupation of Crimea. And of course, we should be careful and not to accept any manipulation from the Russian side, because we also can find in the social media some pictures that the Russian authority already opens the door for some so-called independent monitors for just checking the situation with our sailors or with other political prisoners. Here we should state on the position that the state is responsible, and that's what you already said, and the Ukrainian state should know and should provide their vision for any access of any people to the Ukrainian citizens. I mean that we don't have any possibility to accept one-time manipulation with so-called independent monitors, what we saw in social media just a few days ago.
For me, it is opportunity to remind about other political prisoners, because after sailors we have 4 new cases with Edem Bekirov and 3 people from Hizbut, with case so-called Hizbut Tahrir. Russia can manipulate with other cases, with Oleg Sentsov or Hizbut Tahrir or Medjlis or even Donbass, but situation with sailors is clear. In neutral waters, in the Black Sea, 3 our boats couldn't pass the Kerch Strait. They were deployment from the Odessa to Mariupol. They are going to come back to Odessa, and they were attacked. That's why this case could remind international community, Ukrainians, about these other political prisoners, and even other prisoners of war.
And I probably
Yes.
would ask you to remind, because you also knew some people who.
Yes, and I completely agree that this is a very clear case. When Russia could not manipulate in this case. This is real officials of Russia kept officials of Ukraine, and this is absolutely clear case. And what I would also like to say that in this case, the best response from Ukrainian Navy or Ukrainian state would be a strong Navy. A strong sea power of Ukraine would prevent in future such cases like that. Because with a weak Navy, whatever support society would demonstrate, we would not be like safe in the after this or such kind of cases. As of the other prisoners of Russia, let's say, I would like to also remind the cases like so-called Crimean saboteurs or diversants. The three of former naval officers, or Ukrainian naval officers. One of them, Vladimir Dudka, was my commanding officer on the ship I served in the past in 1996, 1998. So I was his deputy commanding officer of that ship. So this is a kind of personal event for me. And they kept already for, what, two years. They in Simferopol, in CISO of Simferopol kept. And again, Vladimir also has this health problem without any, absolutely the same scenario. Yeah,
and
kept there.
This situation is opportunity to convince our partner to find a new platform for releasing our prisoners, because Minsk is not platform. We discussed it before this program. We couldn't know how to discuss the situation with prisoners, with political prisoners, with religion prisoners, with prisoners of the war, and maybe this situation to convince our international partner to start this job, to be more creative, to maybe make a new envoy for political prisoners. And I don't know.
And yeah, Bogdan, probably I would like you to finalize in particular on that, because you knowing international legal system, we understand it's political, we are not European politicians or Western politicians here. However, really, the case could be raised. So what are still the tools? Because within this last 3 months, there was a lot of international support condemning the attack. However, there were not so many calls for releasing these particular people, and I know that there are not so many articles written by the Western journalists, because it's just one of many cases.
So just 2 days ago, during the General Assembly meeting, we saw that Mr. Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of United Nations, was passed the 25,000 signature request to take actions to release Ukrainian 24 prisoners of war, the Ukrainian 24 sailors. So also in a few days we will have the presentation of the United Nations monitoring mission, which will cover the case from the 25th of November, then this aggression happened. So we see that some processes is going on, and first of all, after these 5 years of conflict, I can say that the first point we should to provide very clear documentation of all violation of human rights and international obligation, international humanitarian law by Russia. The second, of course, the support from the society, and support from the state, from families, and we know that it's impossible to respond to requests of the families just to say when their relatives will be free. Yes, it's all time very difficult, but in any way, we see that we are doing a lot. So I mean the state with all actors who playing with here doing a lot, but unfortunately we have a case then the aggressor, and here the state, I mean the Russia Federation, they have no rules, I mean the no international, no clear rules, and they just do everything what they want. And everybody, I think in the whole world already see that this is a very clear case. But of course we have no chance to do the same illegal actions related to the citizens of Russia. And that's why we have to do the things what I already said. And of course, the question related to continue work on different international platforms. I mean UN, Council of Europe, OSCE, who can really have some influence. And also, you already said about the Ukrainian celebrities. We just a few days ago met with colleagues from the civil society, human rights civil society organization, and we already discussed the call to the world celebrities who can apply to the chairs in the Russia with some request that come on, here is already clear case. We talked about some ambassadors from UN. We called some celebrities from the world level who can apply it, and maybe it will work. In the same time, we don't have a chance just to say this will work and this will not work. We should do everything what we can, and some of these actions will give the results.
So thanks a lot for the discussion and bringing attention to the topic, and I really hope that there would be some follow-up from and the interest to the case. You can also watch the report from the court we've done earlier. You can find it on our webpage en.hromadske.ua from the trial over these 24 Ukrainian war prisoners in Russia. I think we still don't know if there would be next trial open for the journalist. And maybe there would be more attention if it happens. With this, I say thank you to our guests. So there was Bogdan Kriklevenko, who is the human rights defender, Serhiy Shumsky, who is a member of Association of Veterans of the Ukrainian Navy, Leila Omer and Osman Pashayev are working now with the Foundation for Support of Prisoners of War, Baraber. And I also call you to follow our social media, Facebook and Twitter, search Hromadske International. So we are rounding up with this topic, but I would just remind you beside that today on February 24th, we have the elections in Moldova. Our colleagues are traveling there and reporting. We have reports, Skypes, political analysis. That's all you can find on our webpage en.hromadske.ua as well on our social networks. So stay tuned and thank you.